For decades, American cars ruled the streets. From the 1930s to the 1960s, buying domestic wasn't just common, it was a point of pride. The choices were endless, the styling was bold, and the reliability was good enough that most families stuck with the same brand for life. But then something changed. The 1970s hit, and suddenly the American automotive world got weird. Engineering shortcuts, rushed emissions fixes, bad cost cutting, and a few cars so deeply flawed that they didn't just disappoint owners, they helped push millions of Americans into buying imports permanently. These are the cars that didn't just fail mechanically, they failed culturally. They damaged reputations, tanked resale values, and created the kind of bad press that sticks around for generations. Today, we're breaking down the top 5 worst American cars of all time, the vehicles that truly changed the way Americans felt about their own automakers. And trust me, by the end, you'll see exactly how deep the damage went. Let's start with number 5.
Number 5. 1979 Chrysler R-Body cars.
Chrysler needed a home run in the late 1970s. Instead, they released the R-Body lineup, the Newport, the New Yorker, the Dodge St. Regis, and the short-lived Plymouth Grand Fury. On paper, these were downsized, full-size sedans meant to compete with GM and Ford. In reality, they were old ideas dressed up in new badges. A platform from another era. By 1979, Chrysler was out of money. Not tight budget, but searching the couch cushions broke. Instead of developing a modern platform, they took an early 1960s B-body chassis, warmed it over, and called it new. That meant outdated suspension, heavy steel construction, terrible weight distribution, old-school engineering when buyers wanted something modern. GM had downsized successfully 2 years earlier. Ford followed with the Panther platform. Chrysler? They dragged the B-body into a new decade and hoped no one would notice. Quality control that just disappeared. These cars developed electrical gremlins legendary even by 1970s standards. Testers reported brake lights turning on interior dome lights, clocks shutting off when you hit the brakes, headlight dimming during acceleration. It was electrical bingo. You never knew which part of the dashboard would give up next. Lean burn. The right idea, the wrong time. Chrysler used a primitive emissions control carburetor system called lean burn. The brain of this system? A small computer box, mounted directly on the air cleaner lid, inside an engine bay that regularly hit 200+ degrees. Computers don't appreciate being slow cooked. Owners experienced random stalling, surging, and hard starts. Dealers were overwhelmed with complaints. Even the suspension was improvised. At one point, Chrysler's torsion bar tooling broke. They couldn't afford to fix it. So they simply installed 2 left torsion bars or 2 right torsion bars, whichever they had. But cars don't weigh the same on both sides, so the ride quality was awful and inconsistent. Why it makes the list? These cars weren't just flawed, they were symbolic of an automaker in crisis. The R-Body cars were supposed to compete with modern downsized vehicles. Instead, they reminded buyers that Chrysler was operating out of survival mode. Let's move on to number 4. Number 4. Ford Pinto and Mercury Bobcat. The Ford Pinto wasn't the worst driving car on this list. It wasn't even the least reliable, but it became a cultural punchline and one of the most infamous cars in US history. The car itself was fine. Let's be fair. The Pinto was a cheap economy car built for a tough market. It rusted quickly, sure. Some engines were leaky, but compared to rivals like the Chevy Vega or AMC Gremlin, the Pinto actually held up decently. So what went wrong? One thing, the rear end. In certain collisions, the fuel tank could rupture and ignite. And the explosive potential wasn't even the worst part. It was Ford's internal cost-benefit memo that leaked to the public. The memo that destroyed trust. Ford reportedly calculated projected deaths, projected burn injuries, and the payout cost per case. Then compared that number to the cost of fixing every Pinto, an $11 part per car. Ford concluded it was cheaper to pay for the settlements. You can imagine how the public reacted. A media firestorm. The Pinto became the symbol of corporate indifference. Reports, lawsuits, national news coverage. Even when the real mechanical risk was statistically low, the damage to Ford's reputation was catastrophic. Why it makes the list. The Pinto wasn't the worst built car here, but it was absolutely one of the most damaging. It changed how Americans viewed safety, corporate responsibility, and the entire domestic auto landscape. Let's move to number 3.
Number 3. 1976 Dodge Aspen and Plymouth Volare. If there's a Mount Rushmore of recalled cars, the Aspen and Volare are front and center. These were supposed to replace the beloved Dart and Valiant. Instead, they became the most recalled cars in U.S. history at that point. The idea was good. A compact sedan/wagon that could be affordable, efficient, comfortable, styled upscale if needed. But the execution was a disaster. The lean burn strikes again. Chrysler's early electronic carburetor controls caused stalling, hesitation, and hard starts. By 1977, Chrysler recalled 1.3 million vehicles for drivability issues. Many owners described having to restart the car while coasting through turns. Not ideal. Safety problems everywhere. This car had seat belts that detached in high deceleration, fuel vapor lines routed near belts that could cut them, brake lines mounted under the battery tray where acid could drip on them, hood latches that failed at highway speed, missing inner wheel houses that caused extreme rust. It wasn't one or two problems, it was everything. Rust, rust, rust. Chrysler hadn't learned its lesson from the rusty 1957 lineup. These cars corroded shockingly fast, especially in northern states. Why it makes the list. The Aspen Volaré didn't just disappoint buyers, it turned them away from American cars entirely. When a car fails in every category, people remember. Let's move on. Number 2. 1980 GMX cars. Chevy Citation, Pontiac Phoenix, Olds Omega, Buick Skylark. This might be the greatest "what could have been" story in American automotive history. A blockbuster launch. The Chevy Citation sold over 800,000 units in its first year. Buyers loved the idea. Compact size, tons of interior room, good fuel economy, modern front-wheel drive packaging. It was everything America said it wanted. Then, reality arrived. The X cars became the most recalled cars ever, surpassing the Aspen Volar. Drivability problems everywhere. Feedback carburetors caused stalling, hesitation, rough idle, hot start failures. Fuel injection didn't arrive until later, and even then only on the 4 cylinders. Steering rack failures. Power steering morning sickness was so widespread, GM ran out of replacement parts nationwide. Brake failure that GM didn't want to acknowledge. Rear brakes would lock prematurely, especially on manual transmission cars. NHTSA pushed for recalls. GM pushed back. Fixes were half-hearted. Owners were furious. Falling apart inside and out. Window regulators snapped. Interior panels fell off. Tape drive mechanisms jammed. Hubcaps flew off base models. These cars aged faster than milk left in the sun. Why it makes the list. The X cars had 95% of the right ideas, but that last 5% destroyed them. And in the process, they pushed millions of Americans toward Honda, Toyota, and Nissan. Let's finish strong. Number 1. Chevrolet Vega and Pontiac Astra. The Vega wasn't just a bad car, it was a cultural turning point. It convinced American buyers that Detroit couldn't build a small car as well as the Japanese. A beautiful disaster. The Vega looked fantastic. The styling team nailed the proportions. It was basically a mini Camaro. Sales were strong at first, then cracks appeared, literally. Rust like you wouldn't believe. GM used an anti-corrosion dip process with an air pocket in the tank, meaning a portion of every body shell never got coated. Those unprotected areas rusted within months in some climates. The engine that ruined everything. The 2.3-liter aluminum block had no cylinder liners, open deck cooling passages, structural flex around the bores, a tiny radiator, dissimilar metal expansion problems. If the car overheated, and many did, the pistons scored the walls permanently, turning the engine into an oil-burning disaster. Valve stem seals also failed constantly, adding to the smoke show. GM tried to fix it. They rebranded the engine Durabilts in later years after internal changes, but the damage was done. The Vega had become the poster child for American unreliability. Why it's number 1. The Vega didn't just fail mechanically,
it destroyed consumer confidence. People who lived through Vegas swore off small American cars for decades. Even today, the name is a punchline. So there you have it, the 5 cars that reshaped American automotive history for all the wrong reasons. Some failed because of rushed engineering, some failed because of cost cutting, and some failed because automakers ignored problems until they became national news. But they all share one thing: they pushed buyers toward imports, and that shift changed the American car market forever. Which one surprised you the most? And which disaster should I cover next? Make sure to subscribe. We've got more deep dive automotive history coming up.